Springbok Radio presents Inspector Carr Investigates.
Good evening. Tonight's investigation reflects a problem that is as grave today as it was when I was a member of the murder squad. Londoners pride themselves on their tolerance towards the unusual, particularly when it comes to people. They'll tell you that it's a question of good manners. But there's another side of the coin. Many a stranger taking up residence in the metropolis finds after a time that this attitude of minding one's own business can become a curse. The curse of loneliness. I myself used to hear people say, "I've been living in my house for over 10 years, and never once have I uttered a single word to either of my next-door neighbours." Yet that next-door neighbour could have been a shy, insecure stranger in a strange area, inwardly crying out for some sign of friendliness. So, tonight's story, as you're no doubt aware, centres around someone who lived alone in a flat in what is probably the most densely populated area in the whole of Greater London. I've called it Death in Isolation. I was just about to depart for lunch when the ever-ubiquitous operation... Now, don't tell me, Ops.
That's right, so, sir. Middle-aged man found suffocated to death.
Oh, dear. Where? What's the address?
60 Royal Buildings, Furness Street, Earl's Court. Police Constable Gerald reported the incident.
Royal Building. Used to pass that old tenement dozens of times when I first arrived in London. OK, Ops, organise transport.
I can't believe it. Who would do a thing like that? Quite unassuming boy he was. Never no trouble.
How long have you been living here, Mr. Miller?
Nearly 2 years. You don't mind if I don't go in? It's given me a rare turn it has.
Oh, that's all right, Mr. Miller, but I shall need to take a fuller statement from you soon, so stick around.
I'm not going no place.
Thought I heard voices, sir. Police Constable Gerald. Nasty business, sir.
Sure he said?
No question about it, sir. I applied all the tests before getting through to headquarters.
Fair enough. Oh, dear. Just a moment. Carr calling operations. Do you read me?
Loud and clear, sir.
Whichever surgeon's on duty, I want him over here right away. It's unfortunate. Looks as though he's been dead for some time.
Very good, sir.
A print man had better accompany him.
Very good, sir.
Over and out. No doubt about the suffocation, judging by the look on the poor chap's face. Did you touch anything, Constable?
No, sir, not a thing.
How'd you get here? Did someone report this to you?
Yes, sir. I was on patrol duty when the caretaker rushed up.
Oh, thank goodness. I was right at the underground. His telephone there. He's been done in. He's lying in his room there. He's
Just a moment, sir. Who's been done in?
One of my lodgers. I wouldn't have known nothing about it if Mr. Levy hadn't called. He was Frank Carter's boss.
Where have you come from, sir?
Royal Building.
I see.
Apparently this Mr. Levy made the caretaker open the room with his master key. He'd gone back to his shop, sir, but it's only 20 yards from here. I told him to expect a visit from you.
Fair enough. Right. I want you to stay on guard until the surgeon and the print officer arrive.
Very good, sir.
Little doubt that he was suffocated with his own pillow, judging by the look of things. I'm going to talk to Mr. Levy.
I had no idea, of course. I don't know what caused me to flap, but I did, Inspector. Mind you, I didn't expect what we did see. But he'd been working for me for 2 years. Always clean and tidy, never a minute late, and as honest as the day's long.
When did you see him last, Mr. Levy?
Last Friday. We closed the shop as usual. He was like that, you know. Used to say to me, "Mr. Levy, this is a very tough neighbourhood. I'd better stick around while you lock up." Now, where do you get that sort of attitude today, I ask you?
True enough. Tell me about him. By his appearance, I'd say he was between 50 and 60.
When he came round here for a job, I thought he was nearly 70. That was 2 years ago.
Was he married? Had he any family, do you know?
I knew nothing about him, sir, not a thing. I knew from the first time I set eyes on him that he wasn't going to be one to give of himself. I was desperate for help. What with my arthritis, I can't move around like I used to. I mean, take a look at this place. Not exactly a gold mine, is it? I couldn't offer anyone more than 30 quid a week. I'll be honest with you, Mr. Carter. I'm looking for someone like you, someone of your age, someone who needs to augment whatever he's got coming in. But I can't pretend that things are going to get any better. Half the shops are closing down. People who own their shops like I do, we're just waiting for the London County Council to approve the rebuilding plans so we can get adequate compensation.
I'm satisfied with 30 quid a week. I've got myself a room in Royal Building up the road. I'm only paying 11 quid and it's got a gas ring.
You say you've been in hospital, have you?
Yeah, that was in Australia. It'll take me some time to get me references.
Oh, I'm not worrying about that. You seem a straightforward enough chap to me. But you're a Londoner, aren't you?
Born and bred. Went out to Sydney about 6 years ago. Have no family, you see, so no one to worry about.
I always felt that when he said he had no family, he was telling me to mind my own business. And so I did. My wife thought I was crazy, taking on someone without any references. But as I say, I couldn't have wished for someone better.
I see. Didn't anyone come to the shop to talk to him for any reason?
No, no one. Well, if they did, it was while I was out. For him to be murdered like that, looks as though there was one side to it I never knew about.
I see, thank you. Well, I won't trouble you any further. There's just one point. It was you who persuaded the caretaker to use his master key, I understand.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I thought he looked a bit more poorly than usual. Ah, well, that's that. I know you think I'm being a bit old-fashioned, not opening my shop on the busiest day of the week, but I'm a son of my father, and his father before him. I believe in tradition, even though my two sons laugh at me.
Oh, they respect you for it all the same, Mr. Levy, and so do I.
I understand what you meant when you said you didn't want to get involved, that all you wanted was a boss-employee relationship. But let me ask you something, Mr. Carter. When did you have a good home-cooked meal last night? You don't have to answer. Why don't you come home with me and sample some good Jewish home cooking?
Very kind of you, Mr. Levy, but no thanks all the same. Don't think I don't appreciate it, I do. And, have a nice weekend.
Maybe that's why I got worried this morning when he didn't turn up for work. As I watched him walking away, he seemed so pathetic somehow.
Well, let me ask you something in confidence, Mr. Levy. Did the caretaker seem reluctant to open the door with his master key?
Reluctant, I should say so. He kept saying the tenants like to keep to themselves, and he had no right to go into Carter's room without his permission. Still, I can understand. We Londoners are all like that.
Well, Mr. Levy, that'll be all, thank you. Now, Jackson, I want you to go to the hospital mortuary and take the dead man's fingerprints.
Very good, sir.
And then take them to the Criminal Records Office. Judging by what his employer told me, this Frank Carter seems to have a somewhat mysterious background. That hospital he said he was a patient in could have been one of Her Majesty's prisons.
Very good, sir.
Yes, Ops.
George Miller, sir, served with the London Rifle Brigade for 7 years. 18 months later was charged with the rest of the Clarendon mob with extortion and assault. Served 3 years in Brixton, released about 2 years ago.
That's interesting. Very interesting. Thanks, Ops.
One other thing, sir.
Yes?
Ex-branch says that he was kept under surveillance for several months. Finally got his present job with the assistance of the Howard League for Penal Reform.
In which case, his employers must have known of his record. If Miller did murder Carter, it couldn't be for financial gain. All right, Ops, thank you. Organised transport. Methinks I'll have a word with the letting agents after all. Tell me, madam, did you interview Carter personally?
Yes, I did. Can I be perfectly frank with you?
I expect you to be, Mrs. Hall.
As soon as one of the Royal Building flats become vacant, we put an advertisement in 2 or 3 of the newsagents' shops in the area. We tell them to apply to the caretaker in number 1. Now, they have to pay a month's rent in advance. The gas ring is operated by putting a coin in the meter. And as for the furniture...
You don't have to go on. I get the message. So, it's the caretaker who collects the rent in advance.
Yes. I collect the first month's rent, he the rest. But really, Inspector, we all know Miller's background. But I can't see him committing murder.
Madam, these are purely routine inquiries. At the moment, it seems a motiveless crime. Everyone who ever came into contact with Carter will become a suspect. Oh, by the way, would you be kind enough to give me a list of all the occupants in Royal Building?
Yes, of course. I have one here. Here we are. Their names, nationality, and place of employment.
Thank you. It'll be useful, very useful indeed. You got that, Ops? I want each of the tenants thoroughly checked, everything.
Very good, sir.
And time's of the essence.
Oh, no, sir.
And what about the autopsy report?
Hasn't come through yet, sir.
Well, then tell him to get weaving. Without it, we still don't know the estimated time of death.
I'll get through right away, sir.
Thank you. Yes? Oh, you're back, Jackson. Good. Well, what have you got?
Plenty, sir, plenty. His fingerprints show that his name isn't Carter at all. It's Laxton, Ernest Laxton. What's more, he came out of Brixton prison 2 years ago. Never been to Australia in his life.
Brixton, you say?
Yes, sir. Served 7 years for manslaughter. No previous convictions.
Well, now, this must be more than a coincidence. Surely our friend the caretaker was a guest in the same establishment. What's more, Miller and Carter seem to have been released from prison at about the same time. The plot thickens, don't you think so, Jackson? Of course, the fact that the caretaker was released in the same period of time could be no more than a coincidence. Nevertheless, it seemed to offer a lead in an investigation that up till then was getting me nowhere fast. My first task was to ascertain whether there was a next of kin. There was. An attractive young woman. Come in.
Mrs. Freeman, sir.
Oh, thank you, Jackson. You needn't wait.
Very good, sir.
Oh, come and sit down, Mrs. Freeman. I understand you had the unpleasant task of identifying your father.
Horrible. Awful. I feel so guilty.
Guilty, Mrs. Freeman?
I couldn't forgive him. When he wrote to me from Brixton, I threw the letters in the waste paper basket. When the prison reform people came to tell me that he was being released 2 years ago, I told them I wasn't interested. Killed my mother. How could I forgive him?
And now?
May the Lord have mercy on his soul. You know why he murdered my mother?
Not murdered, Mrs. Freeman. He was charged with murder, but the jury brought in a verdict of manslaughter.
My dad strangled Mother because she was having an affair with this man. I was engaged at the time. When Dad was arrested, Colin asked me to give him the engagement ring back. Couldn't stand the publicity, and I didn't blame him.
Oh, you have a pleasant home, a husband and 2 children, I understand.
Oh, yes. It turned out all right for me. I couldn't wish for a better husband than Peter.
What happened to your mother's friend?
You don't mean friend. You mean her lover, don't you? Uncle Bob, I used to call him when I was a kid. I couldn't believe it at the time. Bob? I don't know. The last time I saw him was at the trial.
And what was his name? His full name, I mean.
Bob. Robert.
Yes, Ops.
Robert Quinton, sir. Emigrated to Canada 6 years ago. Whereabouts unknown.
Well, give my compliments to John Stewart at Canada House. Ask him to do some research for me.
Will do, sir.
In the meantime, try and raise the governor of Brixton Prison for me.
Very good, sir.
Come in.
Oh, I'm sorry we took so long with the autopsy. Our difficulty was determining the actual cause of death. You see, the man's heart was very weak, and we cannot be sure whether its failure resulted from suffocation or not. Nevertheless, it was an interesting diagnosis.
Well, shut the door and come and sit down, Doc.
Oh, right.
Well, I can understand your clinical interest in the poor man's demise, Doc, but whatever the cause, it was the result of murder. All I want is the ETD.
I know, but that wasn't easy either. You say that as far as you can gather, he was last seen alive on Friday evening, is that so?
Yes, that is, sir.
Oh, well, the report states that he was killed at least 2 days before the time his body was discovered, which was midday on Monday. Unhappily, we can't be closer than that.
Well, fair enough, but it's a pity. Means that he could have been killed any time after 6 p.m. on the Friday until midday Saturday. Just a minute. I just thought of something. Excuse me, Doc.
Yes, sir.
Listen, Ops, that list of tenants.
They've all been questioned.
Yes, I know. Get through to immigration. Find out if any one of those named in the list has visited or lived in Canada. Shouldn't take more than a few minutes if the immigration boys put it through the computer.
All right, sir.
And what about my call to the prison governor?
He was out, sir. I left him. Oh, excuse me, sir. The light's flashing. Just a second, sir. He's on the line, sir.
Good.
Speak up, Colonel Potter. I've got Chief Inspector Carr for you, sir.
Ah, Carr.
Good afternoon, Colonel. Thank you for returning the call. I'd like some information on 2 ex-convicts. A chap named George Miller and another Ernest Laxton.
Oh, well, I'm sorry if they're involved with you chaps. Both became trustees, earned their full remission, but particularly Laxton, although he was far too shy and retiring an individual to be of much use.
And tell me, Colonel, were either of them prison informers?
Oh, really? You should know better than to ask a question like that, but since you've done so, yes. Miller, it was his information that helped us to stifle a mutiny before it got underway.
Well, no wonder a hard case like Miller was recommended by the Howard League for Penal Reform. I understand that they were released about the same time.
Well, just hold on and I'll give you the exact dates. So, while I'm searching for the information, is there anything wrong? Ah, yes, here we are. Miller was released on March the 3rd, Laxton on the 28th.
Oh, so there was an interval of over 3 weeks. Would they meet each other in jail, Colonel?
Oh, no. Miller wasn't in for more than 3 years. He'd be in West Block. Anyone serving a longer sentence than 5 goes into North Block.
So you don't think they would have met inside?
Almost impossible, I'd say. But unless they saw each other at the offices of the Howard League.
Well, that's a point worth exploring. Thank you, Colonel.
Oh, not at all. Anytime. Goodbye.
Goodbye, sir. Oh, well, my only really strong suspect is Miller. In fact, were I to make a report on my investigation to date, Doc, I'm sure the Assistant Commissioner would say, pull him in on suspicion.
On what grounds? At the briefing conference yesterday, you said that robbery couldn't have been the motive.
There's one strong indication as to his guilt. The locked door. That was brought up at the conference. Somebody suffocates the lodger and calmly proceeds to lock the door behind him. No one has the master key other than the caretaker.
By Jove, you're right. Then he must be guilty.
Well, I would say yes, except Miller is an old villain. He's gone straight, I grant you. Being caretaker of that crummy block of flats isn't exactly a sinecure, yet he's held it down for 2 years. Now, no experienced villain would be so foolish as to leave behind such a strong clue. A first-year police trainee would ask himself, how did the killer get the key to lock his victim's door before he made his getaway? No, I don't think Miller did it. Now that the prison governor has convinced me they didn't see each other in jail. Yes, Ops.
Immigration says that none of the tenants have ever visited or lived in Canada, sir.
Oh, dear. Seem to be running around in circles. Try again. The list I gave you were present tenants. Tell X-Branch that I want the list of everyone who's occupied Royal Building within the last 2 years. Place looks more like a lodging house than anything else. I should imagine the turnover in tenants is pretty high.
Very good, sir.
In the meantime, I'm going to have another word with our friend Miller. Well, don't look so scared, Mr. Miller. I'm not going to eat you. It's that locked door I want to talk to you about.
I knew you'd be questioning me about that.
Do you keep your master keys on you during the day?
Yes, sir. I never let them out of my sight. I haven't slept since it happened, really, I haven't. Kept wondering how that door was locked.
Have you ever lost your keys? Asked for replacements?
No, sir, I swear it.
Are you sure?
Look, Governor, I know you've checked up on me. I've been a villain since way back. They do say set a thief to catch one. When I go to bed at night, these keys are on this chain. I put it on that shelf there, but not before I locks my front door and bolts the window. I don't care how hot it is outside,
I
sir.
see. Thank you. Quite a mystery, isn't it, Mr. Miller? All right, take it easy. You were my only suspect. Yes, Ops.
Sorry, sir, but no one who's occupied one of the flats in Royal Building over the last 2 years has ever applied to visit or take up residence in Canada.
So the only other possibility goes down the drain too, does it? Think I'd better send for the proverbial bowler hat. Thanks, Ops. You hear that, Jackson?
Yes, sir. You forgive me saying so, sir. It may be that the caretaker's doing a double bluff, sir.
Yes, there is always that possibility. What in chess is known as the Sverdlov move. Your opponent is led to believe that no experienced player would put his chessman in such a dangerous position, so he tries a counter move and falls into a trap. You think that the caretaker deliberately locked the door with his master key so that I should be led to believe that he must be innocent. He wouldn't be so stupid as to point to his guilt. Oh, the estate agents, of course. What's the name again?
Lansdowne and Smith.
Right. I'm going to pay that Mrs. Hall another visit. Tell me, Mrs. Hall, how many on the staff, excluding yourself?
Are you referring to all our branches? I'm only the manageress here.
No, just this branch.
Just 5 of us. There's Miss Needham. She's over there. Robert Quinton. He's in the other office. The other 2 are out showing prospective clients some of our available accommodation. Why?
What are their names, please?
Look, what is...
Please, madam, time is of the essence.
Let me see. One of them has only joined a fortnight ago. I keep referring to him as Morris. Yes, Morris Simpson. And then there's Tommy Granger.
Well, let's forget the one who joined you a fortnight ago. How long has Mr. Granger been with you?
Not with me. He's been with the firm for 12 years.
12 years. Well, that only leaves your Mr. Quinton. When did he join the firm?
Now, look, Inspector, you don't think...
Madam, please answer my question.
I can't tell you offhand. Yes, I can. 2.5, maybe 3 years.
That's more like it. Do you mind introducing me to Mr. Quinton?
If you insist. Follow me, please.
Come in.
This is Chief Inspector Carr of New Scotland Yard. He'd like a word with you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hall, if you don't mind.
What? Oh, I see. All right.
Mr. Quinton, I'm making inquiries into the death of this man. Have a look at the picture. You recognize him? You should. He's one of your tenants.
Of course I do. Name's Laxton. That's all I know about him.
Yes, Mr. Quinton.
Well, he told me his real name. Said,
are you trying to tell me that the man who strangled his wife because of you was so friendly
that was years ago. I had nothing to do with it. It's murder, I mean. You can't prove it otherwise.
He changed his name to Carter, and in your nervousness, you called him Laxton. It won't do, Mr. Quinton. I'm arresting you on suspicion, and I warn you that anything you now say... I'm afraid, Mrs. Freeman, that you'll be called as a witness for the prosecution to testify as to his identity.
I can't believe it. After all these years.
I should have asked you Quinton's profession when you were here last. Would have speeded up the investigation. You see, it had to be somebody in that estate agency.
I don't see why.
No, of course you don't. You haven't been given all the facts. But you have. What prompted me to divert my attentions to the estate agents? Simple when you come to think about it. However, in case you're not sure, I'll be back to tell you. Have you deduced my reasons for concentrating on the estate agents? You should have done, because there was much evidence pointing to the overall importance of the murdered man's room. The fact that it was locked and the caretaker had to use his master key. Remember,
I've never let the keys out of my sight. When I go to bed at night, these keys on this chain, I put them on the shelf there, but not before I lock the front door and lock it.
now, the culprit may have gained access to the room by simply opening the door. He had no reason to assume that the occupant had locked it. Or he may have knocked and been admitted. But who, other than the caretaker, would possess a master key? The estate agents, of course. Oh, it all came out at the trial. Quinton saw the man who strangled the woman he loved from his office window. A few inquiries, and he learned that he was a tenant in Royal Building. The rest was easy. Good night.
Inspector Carr Investigates, with Hugh Rouse in the title role, is written and produced by Michael Silver. Listen again next Thursday night as Inspector Carr Investigates.